Dear students. Um, in the last class, we had a discussion on social contract theory of John Locke. And before that, we also had a discussion on social contract theory of Thomas Hobbes. And we have seen how different their perception about human nature and state of nature, and the reasons for the uh, reasons for the entering into the contract for creation of a state. Today, we are going to have an in-depth discussion on social contract theory of Rousseau. Rousseau was a great philosopher. Uh, he developed, the concept of popular sovereignty, and he was responsible for now the he was one of the responsible philosophers for the rise of um, American War of American War of Declaration of Independence, and also French Revolution. And he also influenced why there should be popular sovereignty, and many constitutions followed his uh, the philosophical perception in drafting the constitutions. And uh, let us have let us begin the discussion on Rousseau. Yes, yes, yes. Social contract theory of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Uh, he was born in Switzerland in 1712 AD to 1778. That was uh, during 18th century. His influence was during 18th century. Um, he, this is John Jacques Rousseau. Uh, his famous work was Discourse on the Origin of Inequality. Why, how inequality is born. He advocated popular sovereignty and abolition of social privileges. And his most famous saying, which is well known to one and all, that man is born free, but he is in chains everywhere. So why, how he was born free? When he lived very close to the nature, he was very much free. He enjoyed real freedom. But with the onset of the family and private property, made him a slave, and he was tied up in chains. So he was in chains everywhere. So to come out of that chains, so what kind of contract he entered into, and what kind of political organization he created, that is what we are going to learn today. uh, and human nature, before as we have done earlier, as we have understood earlier, how contract is being entered into, we learned human nature. Similarly, here also, to understand the social contract theory of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, we need to understand his perception of the human nature. So it is entirely a different perception. According to Rousseau, man was essentially good. uh, the primitive instincts unite men, and reason divides them. When man follows his natural instincts, is good. When his natural instincts are suppressed or distorted, he becomes bad. So it is a quite a contrary view to the view held by John Locke. John Locke said, human reason uh, enables him to live peacefully with his fellow human beings. But here, the reason, if reason starts working in human being, he becomes bad. Instinctively, a man is essentially good. So his natural instinct is very good. Human being basically and naturally is very good, according to Rousseau. uh, Pride overpowers man, and this pride is due to the artificial environment created by art and civilization. So this is very important statement. Everybody believes or everybody thinks that the art, science, and civilization has you know led to a lot of development, and these are the reasons for the development of human being. And there has been a huge development of civilization, and everybody thinks so generally. But according to Rousseau, and art and science, especially art, for example, art has created a kind of a pride in human being. Science also created a pride in human being. Human being thinks that he has created so many things with his knowledge by understanding the laws of nature. So that is how he feels very, very proud. But how he is getting degenerated in terms of his freedom, in terms of living naturally, in terms of being with his natural instinct, that is good nature. So the unnecessary pride creates, overpowers human being, and it becomes very you know uh, very selfish, and he becomes an arrogant, in the sense that he thinks that he is the only man on the planet to create so many things, and to create a kind of development which is so great according to him. uh, and the state of nature, uh, the according to Rousseau, the state of nature was pre-social. Pre-social means uh, it was there was no society, there was no family, there was no private property, and man enjoyed real freedom. He moved wherever he wanted, he lived wherever he wanted. He really enjoyed freedom. And that was a pre-social. There was no family, there was no private property, there was no civilization. It was pre-social. The primitive man, according to Rousseau, primitive man was a noble savage. Noble savage. Here, savage is like wildness, like wild animals. We use the term. It's here he is so wild, but he was very good. Animals may not be noble. Animals are not noble, but whereas man, human being, was very noble, savage in the sense he did not have any rationality, reason to develop, or to create a kind of atmosphere where he wants to show that he has developed so much, a kind of pride he develops. That kind of situation was not there. And he did not know virtue, vice, right or wrong. So he did not know anything, how to cheat, or he was not of the view of what is right, what is wrong, what is virtue. He was very noble, and he enjoyed primitive bliss in the state of nature, because he did not have any jealous, he did not have any kind of bad motives. So he was really a very good. uh, and he enjoyed during the state of nature, according to Rousseau, uh, perfect liberty and equality, and lived a life which was close to nature. He satisfied only his immediate needs. So if he felt thirsty, he drank water. If he felt hungry, he ate food. But he never thought in terms of accumulation, in terms of greed. Greed, is the common future today of every man, that he wants to accumulate as much as possible, and thereby he's losing his freedom. So that is what John Rousseau said. So man during the primitive stage, during state of nature, enjoyed perfect liberty. He says idyllic bliss. Man really enjoyed real bliss. That is what how a human being was during state of nature. And this blissful condition, this natural environment, where man lived very close to the nature, and he was a noble savage. He did not know any wish or good or bad. So that he was so simple in living. But this situation has changed. How this the status, the situation in the state of nature had changed. It changed because of the population increase, and the institution of property and family came into existence, and this created a feeling of mine and time. So how man had degenerated because of the increase in population, and the institution of property and family, which came into existence, was responsible for the emergence of a feeling like mine and time. This is mine, that is yours. So this feeling started with the emergence of private property and family. Jealous and selfishness replaced innocence and primitive simplicity. So during the state of nature, man was very innocent, and he lived with primitive simplicity. And this condition changed, and this atmosphere changed, and jealous and selfishness um, took over him. uh, and jealous and selfishness replaced innocence and primitive simplicity of man in the state of nature. That is how the state of nature had degenerated. It became very bad. And so now question arise. Now how then now to harmonize the institutions of family and property with the liberty, equality, and the individualism of the state of nature. Now he has a very difficult question, a very difficult challenge before man. Now he cannot take away the property and family. And also he wanted the primitive blissfulness. He wanted to enjoy again real freedom. Now this is a quite a difficult situation, where he has to reconcile with the property and family, and his need to enjoy real freedom. So to to coordinate or to overcome this difficulty, he need to enter into a contract and create something which will give him both, which will give him family and property, and also real freedom. So that is how he, primitive man, had to enter into a contract. um, War, murder, wretchedness, and horror became universal. Disorder and anarchy remained a part of the state of nature. So that was how the degeneration of state of nature took place. Now, Rousseau said man had to enter into the contract. Why he had to enter into the contract? Yes, now I have said, to harmonize the institution of family and property with the liberty, equality, and the individualism of the state of nature. So that is how we had to harmonize these two contradictory situations in which man was pushed into himself, for the creation of a political society on the basis of social contract. So we had to enter into contract for creation of a political society, which he thought would harmonize the institutions of family and property with the liberty, equality, and the individualism of the state of nature. So he wanted to protect his individualism, and therefore man had to enter into contract. Now let us see the nature of contract. What kind of contract he entered into? Let us see. Uh, Between the individual and the community. The contract was between individual himself and the community. The whole community is a party to the contract. Here, the parties to the contract were individual himself and also whole community. Let us see example. A, B, C, and D as individuals uh, surrender their natural rights to the corporate whole, which again consists of A plus B plus C plus D. Here, A plus B plus C plus D shows a kind of a collective entity, a corporate entity or a collective entity. When individuals combine together, they will create more force or more powerful common good uh, when compared to individuals being added separately. So its collective entity will enjoy the sovereign power. So that is how the this is the nature of contract. The government is an agent of the community. It is answerable to the community. So government is just an agent, and it is responsible only for implementing its will. So whatever will is there of the community, it is the responsibility of the state to implement that will. Here it clearly shows that the sovereign power of the people. Rousseau observes that man becomes more, more and more rational through continuous participation in the exercise of powers conferred on the community by the act of contract. Here we have to understand that because of the contract, they created a community. That community is having sovereign power by man, by participating continuously in the activities of the community, he will enjoy, he will protect his property and his family, and also at the same time he will create something called common good for the sake of all. By participation he enjoys his freedom in deciding about himself. That is how, by continuous participation, man enjoys the freedom and also protects his family and private property. So now the very important concept, when we read about Rousseau, is general will. This is very important. Now we have to understand the concept of general will. General will, it represents the common consciousness of the common good after discussions and deliberations. This is important. So general will is a kind of common good which is being felt by all. That is common consciousness. Everybody should be aware that he should work for the common good. Until and unless he works for the common good, he enjoys the freedom to participate in the affairs. And through discussions and deliberations, a human being participates in the affairs of the common good. General will is the will of all the citizens when they are willing not their own private interest but the general good. It is the voice of all for the good of all. Here we have to understand every human being has got two characters. In one character, he thinks of himself, his private interest. And also in the second situation, he thinks about the common good, about the welfare of all. When he thinks about the common good or welfare, he keeps aside his private will, his private interest. So as long as he acts for the common good, he enjoys the liberty to participate in the common affairs. So that entity, that common good, which is being decided, continuously, uh, which is being created continuously, that will have the sovereign power. So the common good represents general will, and the common good represents, the common good is also having the sovereign power. So the state, here it is not the state which is having, it is not the government which is having sovereign power. It is, as long as the common good, it works for the common good, it enjoys the sovereign power. So the sovereign power is rests with the uh, people. So that is why popular sovereignty was the concept, he developed, which is the basis for the modern democracies, liberal democracies. Uh, the general will is sovereign. The general will can legitimately command the obedience of every individual. So, to the common good, to the common welfare, everybody, should be obedient. By following the general will, the individual finds not only fulfillment but also true freedom. Here, fulfillment means here a sense of achievement. Whatever he thought through contract, he will achieve. And also by participating in the common affairs, he enjoys, true freedom. That is what, general will gives him a fulfillment and true freedom as well. Rousseau's state. Rousseau's state was a small state. He he was for a limited population of about 10,000. Only with such small population, everybody will participate in the common affairs. Only in such a state, an assembly of sovereign people can express their views and adopt such laws which will promote the general welfare. So, according to Rousseau, there should be, a small state. Only in such small state, all the people are able to participate. Only through participation in the common affairs, man enjoys the real freedom, and also he fulfills whatever, he desires. And now, after knowing the state of nature, especially basically the human nature, how it was good when man lived very close to the nature, he was very simple. He was like, noble savage. He enjoyed idyllic bliss. That is what he, Rousseau said. And in the state of nature, how he lived, so happily. But the state of nature, how degeneration in the state of nature took place because of the increased population, and thereby a development of feeling like mine and thine. And this was the beginning of the inequality. This was the reason for the birth of inequality. When man started thinking in terms of his family and accumulation of his property, then, inequality started. That is why his work, The Origin of Inequality, is so famous. So he inquired into the reason for the birth of inequality and how man, entered into contract to make up the loss that he suffered due to the birth of family and private property, and the civilization that he has developed. So civilization, art, science, civilization, family, and private property are the responsible factors for the degeneration of human character. That is what, Rousseau believed. And he, human being, to become, to enjoy again the real freedom, and also to reconcile this freedom with that of private property and family, he entered into contract and created a common entity called, general will, to which everybody agreed to surrender, to, to be obedient to the common good or common welfare. That is how general will, the concept of general will, he developed. And the state, the Rousseau state, is a very small state. where which enables everybody to participate in common affairs. uh, Now, criticism. Uh, what are the concept of general will is based upon the idea of common interest. It is extremely difficult to define common interest. Here, what is common interest? What is common welfare? It is very difficult to define, because once a party forms a government by after winning in the elections, it thinks that it will have it will have monopoly to decide what is common interest, and it will continue to rule uh, the way it wants, and it can make any law, and whenever it makes a law, it says it is for the common interest, but in the name of common interest, it may become a dictatorial tendencies. You will see the dictatorial tendencies. So it is very difficult to decide who will decide what is common interest. Is not clearly mentioned. He said that only in a small state it is possible if all the people participate and continuously uh, speak out, or continuously make out what the common interest be. So only then the general will would prevail. So otherwise, common interest would become a dictatorial tendency. Not clear whether he was for individualism or for absolutism. This is because he advocates the organic. Here, organic means man as part of common good. He will have no individual existence. So he should be seen, individual should be seen as part and parcel of the state. Then that theory which says individual has no independent existence, he should be seen as just a part of the common good, then it is organic theory we call. As well as mechanistic, how state and government becomes an agency, a tool, or a mechanism for achieving common good. So it's also mechanistic. Whether the state, he propounded an organic theory, or he propounded a mechanistic theory where state is seen as a tool, as a mechanism for common good. And he started his philosophy for individualism, but in the end, he he propagated a kind of organic theory in terms of collective entity or collective good. So the general will, so the mechanism to carry out the will of the community. So this is how he was not clear about whether he was for individualism or for absolutism. But later on, his philosophy became a tool uh, for the was responsible for the emergence of a kind of autocratic tendencies. So that is how we should understand Rousseau and his social contract theory. Contribution. Finally, he insisted that all political authority should ultimately come from people. That is what popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty rests with the concept of general will. French Revolution. He influenced French Revolution in 1789. He was also one of the great influencing philosophers of American War of Independence in 1776. He also influenced, many idealist philosophers like Immanuel Kant, Hegel, T.H. Green, etc. Uh, this is how he had a great influence during 18th century, and he was for popular sovereignty. The popular sovereignty shows the basis for the democracy, for modern democracies. Thank you very much.